Well, I guess we're being recorded at this point. So, but, uh-oh, excellent. So, I can't kick everybody off, so I have some control. But anyway, if you're interested, more interested in Zoom, you can, as I mentioned to you folks a little earlier, you can go to Zoom and you can get your own Zoom account, and it doesn't cost any money, so it's a free account. And they also have some tutorials there on how the program works, and I'm just starting to learn it, but even knowing how it works, it takes a while to get used to the controls, so it becomes second nature. So we will be using this, and I look forward to working with you. That I do have a little agenda that I've put together here somewhere. Where is that? Oh yeah. So, and that's I wanted to talk about the Zoom. So we're going to be using this as ongoing. If you need to talk to me and you don't want to use the email, or you want to talk to me via Zoom, you can let me know. We can set up a time, and then we can set up an individual Zoom session. So that is one nice thing about this. But you can also, should be able to email me, and we'll just see how it works out. So it's a learning process for me as much as it is for you. If anybody has any general questions or concerns, feel free to let me know. I already covered spring break, so next week is spring break for you, but I'm sure I'll be working pretty hard, and I will be taking emails and answering questions. I'm going to be sending out emails for a while, in addition to posting things in Canvas, but I'm still learning how to use Canvas. I think the school has probably been sending out some emails to you. I don't have everybody's email address correctly, or the school doesn't, because I've had a few get kicked back. And I'd have to go back into my records and look and see who it is, because some email addresses get picked up as spam by the school filter, and so they don't get through. So I'm trying to get everybody's phone numbers so I can call those when the email comes back. But has anybody seen the Canvas notifications?
I haven't personally looked on Canvas.
Okay, well, I do have some things published, so we'll take a look at that.
Okay.
I haven't posted the assignment yet. But I have a typo in there. So finish reading chapter 8 in your text. There's some review questions. Chapter 9, which is on foundations, and chapter 10, which is, I believe, on floor frame. And so I also have some videos that I'll be referring you to that I think are pretty good for the framing, done by a guy named Larry Hahn. So that was part of Fine Home Building. And if you're working on something, or you have a place where you can practice, you can still go out in the yard. A lot of you have tools now, so you can go do something. So my goal is to try and get us all to the end of the semester, not have this be a waste or a washout for you, and turn something challenging into something that's positive by the time we get all through it. So in the future, you'll be talking to people and getting directions much more frequently over the internet anyway, so we might as well start diving into all of that. And I can get rid of this now. So where am I? Oh yeah, I'm right there.
Well, I just checked on Canvas and I didn't see anything posted for our class.
No,
Okay,
there's
I'll
nothing,
find
yeah.
out I'll find out what's going on. My understanding is with some phones, they don't work with Canvas very well. But I did publish it. I could see it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's there. But I'll look into it and we'll see if we can get that straightened out. So that's part of what I'm doing next week is find out what some of these technical glitches are and see if we can get them resolved. As you remember, before all of this happened, the school was having problems with their IT anyway because they purchased a brand new program to integrate all of the functions they have, and it wasn't working then, so it has much bigger demand on it now, so I don't expect it to be working perfectly moving forward. But we'll try and get the bugs worked out.
All right.
So you're all very quiet. You can see I'm waiting for things to warm up a bit. It's a little chilly this morning. So maybe I'll go out and put the Longhorns on the car a little later. Cruise the neighborhood.
There you go.
So we can see how that goes. Matter of fact,
So, Larry, I was looking on Canvas. I know,
Yeah.
like they said, there wasn't anything, and it says it hasn't been published.
Yeah, there's nothing published on Canvas at all. It says that the class hasn't started yet on mine.
okay, well, I'll find out what's going on. And so almost everybody's working remote, and that's why I say I need your help
Yeah.
because of my computer, or at least when I click on it, it shows that it's been published, and when I go to Student View, which I'm able to do, I can see things, but I have had a number of people tell me that they're not seeing much of anything. And so then I need to report that, and they need to get back to me and explain why it's not working. So that's what we'll try and do.
Okay.
I hope. So
We'll get it taken care
So
of.
I hope everybody is doing well right now. I've been working on a couple little projects, so I'll probably continue to do that. I think I need to get one more camera. I do have, like I say, this one here. And if you don't like I think this is the one. So if you prefer me in this mode, just let me know. So any of those color schemes, just let me know. But I will be bringing some tools in now that I'm home. A bunch of the tools I had to leave at school because they told me I had to get out and I couldn't get anything. So fortunately, I have a few things here, and we can look at those. And I think, let's see if I can find the other thing I'm looking at. So I can share my screen. Let me see what we got going here. So this is a chapter I had assigned. I don't know if anybody had any questions on this. Anybody remember it?
I haven't read it yet.
Using tapes. So this was on establishing building lines, and I think
Oh,
somewhere, that's not what I want. Let me shrink that back in.
this is what we went over in our last class, right, Larry?
Yeah, we started to.
Yeah. Just the.
All right. So I don't know if you can see this. Yay, Nate?
Well, I can see your screen, and it just has it's like the files.
Folders, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you're looking through a phone, it's going to be hard to see, but I will post this. So this is just some pictures. This survey pin. So when you're doing building layout, a lot of times you can't find the monuments, or they're lost, or they're stuck in the weeds, or they're not exactly where you think the corners are, because sometimes they'll put them on an extension similar to using batter boards. But here in California, you'll see a lot of these look a little bit like the end of a shotgun shell. Some of them are set into a metal pipe. If they're set into a metal pipe, you might need something like this. And that's just a metal detector that is used for locating pipes and pins. You may also see these out in the field. I had a bunch in the storage room, but I didn't get to bring any with me. These are called feathers. So this particular one has been attached to a wooden stake driven into the ground. And they come in different colors. So if you want, you can color code things. And
Yeah,
so these,
I've
yeah,
seen
these
those
particular,
before when we start new jobs, and
yeah,
there's just there's nothing there, and all the corners are laid out on the ground.
yep.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the surveyors, a lot of times if they put stakes out, the kids will come steal them and use them for sword fighting.
Yeah.
And so quite often they'll put in two sets. They'll put in some stakes, but they'll also put in the feathers because they're less likely to be removed. They can come in different colors. So if you wanted to color code different things, you can. You'll also see these used for landscape. when they're trying to identify where they want to plant trees, where they want to plant shrubs, where they want to plant this or that, and so they can color code things that way too. We were going to be using, this was what I was planning on doing, we were going to do some leveling. So this is a level that's used for setting elevations and layout. And I've got one here somewhere that we can go over if you want to look at it. There are also survey monuments. And so this particular one you can see is used for vertical control. So this is a U.S. Geological Survey. This one says Yosemite Point. Gives you an elevation above sea level of 6,935 feet. And so if a surveyor was doing some sort of vertical control or topography, and they were near this particular pin, they would use that monument. They would set their rod on top of that monument, and they would know what the elevation of that monument is. And occasionally they have to go back and adjust them, because if you go up to, any of you go up to Mammoth?
Mm-hmm.
You know, up
Yeah.
there, the land is rising. There's a big magma chamber up there. I don't want to alarm you. You think that
Yeah, I knew that.
coronavirus is a bad thing. They've got, there's an active volcano brewing under Mammoth, and it's lifting the land up. And if you go up the Central Valley, portions of the Central Valley have sunk by as much as 20 feet due to pumping out of groundwater. And so from time to time, they have to go back and adjust these things. So as I said, I will post this. Now, this is just a different types of survey monuments. So on a subdivision map, you'd have some pictures. I don't know if I can make this any bigger or not. No. But I'll post this and you can take a look at it. So this is a page out of the regional standard drawings, and it just has a legend for different types of monuments. This talks a little bit about datums. So on survey maps, and again, you may not be able to see it, but there are different referencing systems. And what this one on the far left is the County of San Diego, which is based on the U.S. Geodetic Survey, and it shows minus 2.88 feet versus the Port of San Diego, the survey datum that they use for the mean low tide water is 0, whereas the one the county uses is minus 6 feet, I think. And then the old city of San Diego, they have a different reference point. So you do have to be careful sometimes when you're using datums to make sure you know which one is actually being used. And these days, a lot of times for grading and other types of work, they're taking the elevations off of satellites, but you're telling the satellite in some cases where you are. So this isn't in your book. And then this is just a picture of a survey monument. And again, I will post this. I'll probably put it in an email and email this out to you first so that everybody hopefully will get that. So we'll get rid of that.
Larry, just to make sure that I'm seeing the same picture that you're talking about, I only see like your files. Did you
Yeah.
show us something else?
Yeah, I got something on there. So let me see what's going on here.
Yeah, that's all I see too.
Okay.
Yeah, I just
let's-
reverted back.
Can you see me now?
Now we
I
see
see
you.
Okay, well, the other one's supposed to be sharing. I'll have to figure out what's going on.
It did come up briefly earlier.
Hmm. It was there for a second and then it flashed off. Oh, there you go.
Now we can see.
Oh, that's great. How
Okay.
did you do that?
Yeah.
I don't know, I just clicked on it again. I just
Cool.
clicked on it again. So, survey pin.
Okay.
So
Oh,
Oh,
if
that's,
you-
yeah, that's
Oh,
if
better.
you're
I
in
want
the
to see
city
the
of San
volcano.
Diego,
I want to see
yeah.
that volcano rising.
Yeah, so you can go out and in the
Look at it
sidewalk
yourself.
on your afternoon walk, and you'll see these in the sidewalk. They normally put them on the sidewalk rather than on the property line because they figure if you're digging up your yard, you'll knock the pins out. So they move them out beyond the property line, but on the property line, so that they'll you can still find your property lines. Uh, this is just a pin locator. You can rent those.
Hmm.
It's a metal detector is what it is. But you hold the fat end and the skinny end, you wave it around the ground, and when it starts beeping, uh, then you know you're getting close to something metallic. The biggest problem with those are if you have a chain link fence near your property corners, it's very difficult to find it because it'll pick up the fence. The feathers,
What is the
level,
feathers?
the feathers, they're used, normally you put a nail through them, where this one here is attached to a wooden stake and driven in the ground. So it's just so people can see them and they're less likely to have the kids come and disturb them or get pulled up. They stay in the ground, so they're relatively cheap. I had a bunch. We were going to use some of these. They come in different colors. So you can color code, property corners, building corners, landscaping items, other site works. You can use different colors so that makes it a little bit easier to track things down. Level, which is what they show in your book there in chapter 8. And that was, they have either 3 feet or 4 feet. This one looks like it has 3 feet. And there's a way to get them level. Some are automatic and some you have to get level yourself. So some, if you get them close, they'll level themselves out. This is a U.S. Geological Survey monument. I don't know if you can still see these.
Yeah, they're good now.
Okay. This is out of the regional standard drawings. And as I said, I will email this out to you. So on a map over here in this upper right-hand corner, that's a legend. And so it'll tell you different types of information. So that, and usually somewhere on those tags, you'll see a LS number. That's a licensed surveyor. If you're old enough and you're a civil engineer, you're allowed to legally survey. But these days, in order to survey, you have to go become a licensed land surveyor. But I'll send that out. This is just 3 different datums that are used here locally. And so as you can see though, that they at the same level, here's one that says 612, this one says 9, that one says 0. They're all at the same elevation. However, the reference datum that they're given is different. And then out in the street, you'll often see these metal covers, these triangular covers, and underneath there's a chunk of concrete with a monument sitting on top. If you knock a survey monument out, you're supposed to have it replaced, but the only person that can replace it is a licensed surveyor, and they have to file a document along with putting it back. You can't just knock it out of the ground and stick the pipe back in the hole, because you have, in fact, probably moved it a little bit. But I'll send that out.
So Larry, you mentioned something about a satellite. Can you clarify?
Well, most of the new equipment is using GPS, Global Positioning System. And so you'll see the surveyors out now and they have a rod, and on top of that rod, they have a little receiver, and they're in contact with 2, 3, 4 satellites, the more geospatial satellites they're in contact with, the higher the degree of precision. 20 years ago, the military had these satellites, but the signal was scrambled. And so they use these. If I don't know if any of you are familiar with the cruise missile. So the cruise missile uses
Pershing missile.
Yeah, they use these global positioning. So when they want to send a cruise missile into somebody's bedroom, they know pretty much exactly where they are, and they can send the cruise missile via satellite directly to those places. And so originally all this information was scrambled, but now there was enough demand and it became fairly commonplace with the major powers. They had their own satellites that it didn't make any difference. Originally, we were the ones that had most of it, so we scrambled the signal, but it's not scrambled anymore. But there are various degrees of precision depending on how much you want to spend for a piece of equipment. Originally, survey crews typically had about 4 people. There was an instrument person, there was a lead chainer, there was a rear chainer, and there was usually what they called the bushwhacker or a brush whacker. And so the chain was originally 100 links, I think, 66 feet long. These days we use Kevlar tapes if we're using a tape because the Kevlar is pretty stable, doesn't expand and contract too much, and is pretty consistent. And you have to pull it though with some minimum weight so you get a consistent read each time. Otherwise, you're always going to get a sag in a tape if it's not laying on the ground. So there's some art to that, but these days they have one person doing all the work. You get a expensive piece of equipment with a satellite receiver, and it will follow the person out in the field and go through the same process, but it's much quicker. I think in your book they talk about total stations. Did I bring one into class? Total station?
No.
No. I've got one here somewhere, but if you want to see it, I can get it out. So we have levels and total stations, and any of you use a water level? Heard of a water level?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
long time ago,
Well, they're still useful.
before we had a laser.
Yeah, you can make, well, the problem with a laser though is you need a clear line of sight. And if you don't have a clear line of sight with a water level, you can go into a different room, or you can go around a corner and you can still figure out what the relative elevation difference is. And so you can set up references that way. And I think somewhere I've got a little video on that, how to make one.
I would imagine they use some form of triangulation and some kind of software.
No, nothing that, well, you can, but nothing that fancy. A water level, you can take a couple sticks and some tubing and a couple of yardsticks, and you can make your own water level. So relatively cheap, pretty easy. Lots of times if you're having settlement problems in a house, they'll come in and run a water level survey, or what they call a manometer survey. So, and where did I put that? Let me check.
Thank you.
Get rid of that. I'm looking for something, so let me see if I can find it. It's always something. That's not it. I'll find it after the break, during the break. We'll have a little break. So you folks have any questions on anything now? Besides the fact that Canvas isn't working for you.
Larry, if you can, like, I don't know if you can, or somebody, where we can see those files, like, to have like a snippet or something that shows which tab. Maybe we don't know how to navigate in this website or something.
Oh, now let me see if I can call it up. Just one second. First, I got to get there.
Mhm.
Oops. I'm trying to get in first. Okay. Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yay or nay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So this is my dashboard, which is a little bit different than your dashboard. And here's our class, spring 2020, and I'll show you the student view in a minute. And so this is what I have published. So this little green check mark tells me that it's been published. If I move that out of the way, so you can see course status says it's published. And what I put on here was the Zoom link. And so all you got to do is click on that, and I'm using the same I'm trying to get it out of there now. Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to be using the same Zoom link for all the classes. So there's two ways you can set up a Zoom session. One is you can give each session an individual unique number, and then everybody has to have that number to log in. Or I can just have one link, and you can use that the whole time. So if you want me to get more complicated, I can. But it makes more sense to me just to have the one link. So I've also posted this Hand and Power Tool little safety quiz. Maybe. Select. Or this is the actual Hand and Power Tool safety thing. So that's been posted.
Yeah, it's weird that it shows that it's all published on your
Side.
screen, and then when like I click, I'm only taking this course, and it says like all courses. I wish I could share my screen, but
I think you can.
it just says published, and then it just says
Yeah.
0. Or
Well, this is what the student view is supposed to look like. But what I'm going to have to do is, obviously there's a glitch in the system.
yeah.
So I'll have to notify whoever the Canvas folks are and tell them that students are having a problem, because this is the student view. And so I had put in, I know I'd sent this out already, but I put in that wood frame construction manual here.
You know, Larry, excuse me, one thing that comes to mind, I think there was an email that went out, a message from the district that a server was going to be changed, and it may have affected Canvas.
Mhm.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, so I think you know, you should probably check with you know, with the technical people.
Yeah, I will talk to them. So this that I've already sent out.
That one I received in the email.
Right, because I've been trying to do both. Currently, what I'm trying to do is send things out in both email and get them posted to Canvas. And then hopefully, my guess is it'll take 2 or 3 weeks to get most of the bugs worked out. And maybe by the time you get back, then some of this business in Canvas will be available for you. And so this is our, just our normal stuff. And then, oops. I also have posted, or you should be getting, I'll be emailing this out too. And I may have sent this out also, but this is on trusses and truss bracing. Because it doesn't get put in. And we may have looked at this in class, but maybe it'll come up. There, it looks like it's up. So good, handy things to know. Notice, warning, caution, and danger. And so when you order a truss package, you're supposed to get some information that includes information that's covered in this. And so whenever you see these little circles with the slash through it, it says, don't do that. So, and the only reason they tell you not to do that is because sooner or later, somebody does it. Anyway, we don't need to take a look at that, but this is, like I say, right now I'll find out what's going on so I can see it and you can't, but that's why I have been sending things email as well as posting them to Canvas. So, and if you know of anybody that hasn't been getting the emails, if anybody calls you, have them send me an email so I can figure out where they are and who they are so we can get them back into class. So, at least that's my goal. So.
One other thing that comes to mind is we also received emails, and I was a little skeptical about some kind of a survey. And it asked everything about me except my social security number. So I was a little skeptical about replying to it just, you know, at will. But it seems to have come now from not only from you, but also from the district themselves.
Yeah, I think what they're primarily trying to do, or at least what they told me they're trying to do, is since everybody is being forced online, they're trying to find out which students don't have access. If you need a laptop, for example, or you need to be running some particular type of software in your class, chances are that if you don't have access to the school or the library or anything else, you're not going to be able to do the class. So what they're trying to do is, through the survey, is find out what the students need in order to move forward. So some people need Revit or ArchiCAD or AutoCAD or one of the interior design programs. And you may not be able to run that on your phone because most of the phones don't have that particular software. And also there's no way to put a thumb drive or anything else in there. So they have been handing out laptops and somehow they've gotten some partnership, but they're putting that together. So if you have some particular need, and there's a website, they should have sent out an email that has a website with support resource website, so that if you have a particular need, they're trying to fulfill it and meet it. So I don't know. You know, I'm loaded with computers and tablets and phones and all that kind of stuff here, but a lot of people just use their phone. But anyway, so and like I said, I've gotten some strange notices myself. So this is Canvas. So, but that's the problem I've been having, is because for me it says everything's fine, and for you it says everything is not fine. So we will try and make things fine for you, because it's better if it's not fine for me and it's fine for you. So. That's what everybody tells me. So I think we can get out of here for now.
Is the connection frozen for you? Anyone?
Yeah, it broke a bit.
Yep. Oh,
Can be visible if you want.
Larry, are you there?
there.
You're back.
Okay.
You're back. Woo! So I'm glad to see you back.
There we go.
There we go. There we go. It's always something.
Yep.
It's always something. So I've been meaning to log in on my iPad so I can see what it looks like on the iPad, but I haven't gotten around to that yet.
So Larry, do you want us to go through and answer these review questions in chapter 8?
So we can share the screen and do those sorts of things, and um, I want to get a couple things put together
The voice
so
is failing.
you have something to
Yeah.
listen to besides me.
Michael August is the host. Larry.
Hello?
Hi.
You're back. You're back. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, take a short break. I'm going to go see if somebody's using up bandwidth that I need. And if they are, we'll beat them.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, so give me about, like I said, 15 minutes.
Okay.
Let's stop video. And then
Are we about ready to come back?
Sure.
Okay.
Not sure how many.
Well, I'll give them a few minutes. Try out something a little different. No. Right. Where was I wanting to go?
Oh,
I think here, I'm gonna
Cool.
show you a little thing on water level. Because sometimes those are handy. You can use a laser. So I've got lasers and other things, but this is something that's simple, inexpensive, and you can make your own or you can go buy one and they're pretty cheap to buy. Let's see if this works. Maybe.
How do I get this stupid chat close? Is the water level video going?
I haven't seen it.
I don't see anything.
Yeah.
You're not seeing anything?
No.
No.
Okay.
We're just seeing the,
Well, I'll have to
Word
find
doc.
out what that's all about. I'll have to find out what's going on. Let me get rid of this thing. That's driving me crazy.
I believe it.
There we
Oh,
go.
there we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Good job.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No worries.
No, it's all good.
Slow streaming.
And there's no sound.
Yeah. Is it muted?
Maybe turn the captions on? Is there any?
Thank you.
There we go. Yeah, thank you.
Make sure you close the window.
Little dachshund.
Well, isn't that nice? Anyway, that's how you make a water level.
It's pretty cool.
So you can buy them too. So they're not very expensive. So, or you can use something like this,
Oh,
which is a builder's level. And so this isn't a real expensive one, but we were going to try and do some work with this. So this is another option, and I've got another video. I'll also be posting a link to those if you want to look those over, but this sits on top of a tripod. So they have either 3 or 4 feet on them. This particular one has 3. Some have 4. We've got a little bubble of some sort. Let me see if I can get a top view of this thing. So you can see that the little bubble here on the, right there.
Mhm.
And what you want is you want that centered in that little circle. So, and there is a technique for doing it. Normally what we do is we'll align this so that we're over 2 of the wheels. Let me get rid of that view for a minute. So we'll normally align it so we're directly over 2 of the wheels. We do adjustments with the wheels, and so normally you're going to turn them both in or turn them both out because you're trying to lift this, tilt it one way or the other. This is what they talk about in the book in chapter 8. And away we go. Now you'll also notice that, I don't know if you can see that. Let me try this. They do get rid of that altogether. I hate when I do that. Well, that's upside down. So,
Rocky, what?
that's right side up. Oops. So you can see that we also have a wheel or circle on this thing. So this goes, I don't know where the focus is on this. The focus, no. Probably there, that's a zoom. Starts at 0, goes to 360. And so if you're turning angles, you can use that. You see, we got a little. I'm not used to this camera yet. This is brand new. But anyway, we can turn angles with this. So you can use this in part for building layout too. Turn that off. So these don't cost too terribly much. You can rent these also. This at 32 times magnification. Come in a little plastic case. It's a precision instrument, so you don't want to throw them around too much. This right here is a mirror, so if you don't want to be looking down at it, you can actually look through the mirror and see that bubble. Let me see if we can try that one more time. You'll have to excuse me. I'll try to contain your enthusiasm. You see the bubble in the mirror? Yay, nay?
Yeah.
Problem is it moves the opposite the direction I'm doing. But anyway, the whole idea is you don't have to look down on it. You can look through the mirror and do your sighting for that. So let me shrink that back. So, but when you go through the book, at least in chapter 8, if you haven't read it, it'll make a little more sense if you've at least seen the instrument. So we can do that kind of work. And I think maybe oh. Can you see that? Yay or nay?
No.
Zero.
Okay, well, that's what I wanted to know. Because we're supposed to be able to see that. And I don't know why we can't.
I don't see anything.
All right. Well, let me find out what's going on here. It's always something.
There we go.
Oh,
There we go. Oh,
Gone.
there we go. Can you see that?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So. This is chapter 8. So they got some objectives. So that looks like, could be a level or it could be a transit. Transit can rotate up and down as well as just horizontal. So this chapter is all about, and I'm not going to go through it in a great deal of detail, but this is a common instrument you use. You can also use a laser for things. So you have to figure out what tools you want to use. Problem with the laser is during daylight, they're sometimes hard to use. Inside, they're not too bad. So if you're doing a plan, you need a plot plan of some sort. So you're supposed to show the property lines, the setbacks from the property lines to the building. This one shows a little bit of drainage on it, I think. I don't know why I can't show the whole picture, but steel tape. So you have your 25 or 30-foot tape that you're typically using as a carpenter, and then you may have a 100-foot tape that you're using for layout, or you may have a surveyor come do it. So we talked about once you start a line, typically you'll do your lay out your line parallel to one of your property lines is most typical. And then if you've got right corners, you'll be pulling these 3, 4, 5 triangles off using a couple different tapes. Or you can make yourself a big frame that has a 3, 4, 5 triangle in it and use that to do your building layout. So the 6, 8, 10 that they're talking about, that's just 2 times 3, 2 times 4, 2 times 5. So as long as the ratio remains the same, then you have a 90-degree corner. So this is a level or transit. That looks like
a transit.
Yeah, I can't tell. That's a level, I think.
Oh,
I don't see where that can rotate up and down the way a transit would, but that's just another variety of one. This is a transit right here. So the transit has a pivot in there, and you can do vertical angles as well as horizontal angles. Leveling rod, said they make a number of different types, sometimes refer to these as a Philadelphia rod. Purpose of the target is if you're on the instrument, the magnification is usually somewhere between 24 and 32 times. And if you're very close, it's hard to figure out exactly where you are. The target just makes it easier when you're running it up and down the rod for the instrument person to see about where they are. And then the person can adjust it. With a laser, you'd normally have a target there. And once the laser hits that target, you'll start getting a beeping typically. Typical laser out on a job site. Red has been popular. Green is brighter. So if you're looking for better visibility, they also cost more money. And you don't want to run one of those over, so you do have to put them in an area where they're going to be safe from equipment. My problem is always, didn't I see somebody's dog a minute ago? Anyway, if you have a dog that likes to wag its tail, they'll run back and forth under your tripod and knock it out of level all the time. And you see the little safety warning. At one time, Caltrans was using lasers almost exclusively for surveying, but a number of their surveyors wound up with premature eye damage from the lasers, so they switched over to microwave, I think. So we saw this picture in class. This thing is set way too low, in my opinion. I don't like to have to hunch down like that. My back would kill me. So when you set up the tripod, try and set it up so it's a comfortable eye level for you. My eye level is about 5'6" off the ground. So you can just look, hold the tape up in front of your face, and you can see about where you would like to have the level or find a comfortable position. This is the scale, little vernier scale that's 360 degrees. And the vernier gives you a little bit finer measurement if you're doing trying to do a half degree or partial part of a degree. So there's 360 degrees in the circle. There's 60 minutes in a degree, and then there's 60 seconds in a minute. Is how the for U.S. surveying anyway, they break things down. So when they're doing a stake, normally they'll drive some stakes, pegs, hubs, whatever you want to call them. And then to get a more precise location on that stake or hub, they'll drive a nail in. And so then you'll set up typically over the nail utilizing a plumb bob. So normally the temporary stake is set beyond, because if you're doing work with an equipment, oh, where is this thing here? Somewhere I got a little pointer, but so we like to usually set this out 4 or 5 feet beyond where the corner of the building is, so that when you start digging, you can take this out and come back in and reestablish exactly where that corner was later. So in terms of finding your level or your grade, if you're trying to find the difference between A and B, if you look through A, that'll be the rod is, you're going to be lower down on the rod. So even though it's higher, the rod's going to read lower. This at B, you're going to read higher up on the rod, so you get a bigger number. If you want to know the difference in elevation between the two, you just subtract the lower from the higher number. I just have some directions on how to set the stakes is what this chapter was about. Now here in San Diego, sometimes you can't drive wooden stakes into the ground because the ground's too hard. So you may need a metal stake or a piece of rebar or something else. So the nice thing about a transit is because it can tilt, you can run a straight line. You can set it up, lock it in place, and then you can have somebody stand here, and you can get a point, and you can have them stand at B, and you can get online at the same line as at A, and you can have them stand farther down yet, and you can pick up another point on that line. So that's something that you can't do with a regular level as easily. Yeah, we don't care about that right now. So that's a total station. That's a much more expensive piece of equipment. And somewhere I've got one, but I need a new battery pack. So there's a battery pack, I think, on this one up at the handle. And with that one, you just sight, you look at what you want to do, you push the right buttons on it, it does all of the calculations for you. And we'll tell you the horizontal distance, it'll tell you the change in vertical elevation, it does all of that. But I think the last time I looked, they're about $5,000 or $6,000 for a new one. Another total station. So that was pretty much it on the building layout. Get rid of that. Okay, can you see that?
From my control.
Okay, excellent. So this is chapter 9. And we got to cover a little bit of stuff. So footings and foundations, I don't know if anybody has any questions on that. These are batter boards. So if you typically put nails on the top, tie the string lines to it. You adjust the batter board to the height you want. And these extend out beyond where you're going to dig your footings typically. So I have another video that was done in Australia. I think that covers building layout, similar to what they do in the book. I'll send you a link to that. I'll email that out. The only thing you have to remember is that a pig is a peg in Australia. Or maybe I should say a peg is a pig. So there is some language, and they don't talk about building layout. I think they talk about setting out. So the terminology is a little different. The techniques are exactly the same. But I like listening to the Australian talk because it's like learning another brand of English. So. We don't care about that right now. That's all the objectives which are in your book. So laying out building lines. So here they're saying, you know, the ideal thing is you just hire somebody to do it. Otherwise, you're going to have to do it yourself. So if you're going to do some surveying, you may have to do some research. For survey records, you can go to the County of San Diego website. In the old days, prior to all this coronavirus, you'd go into their office over on Overland, you'd go up to the second floor. They have a record section. You could look through their records and get a copy of the survey documents and the maps. You can now do that online and order them online. If anybody's interested in that, let me know and I'll get that for you. At the Adelaide is another type of fancy transit. So they've set up the batter boards. So normally we're going to have our excavation that you're planning. The batter boards are set up outside of that. They put some string lines together. We don't care about that right now. So this is a crawl space. Now, 2 ways to do a crawl space. You see this one is set in the ground, and that's because in other parts of the country, yeah, I'm cold here, but in Minnesota right now, it's frozen. So in Minnesota, you have to put your footings below the frost line. And so there they have to dig down. And rather than filling all that dirt back in, what they usually do is the crawl space is below grade. So here you can see the grade is up here. They've got the band board. We've got some, here they're showing the steel I-beam, which normally we don't use here, but we can. And so their crawl space is below grade. I don't like that because basically you've got a little potential underground swimming pool below the house. So you can raise, you can have the crawl space above ground. Here we don't have a frost line, so most of our wood floors, if you're building one, are on what they call a raised wood floor because we're not digging down below. And typically you do the footing first. If you're going below the frost line, you dig down, you form up for the footing, you pour the footing, then you pour the stem on top of that. You may or may not have steel from the footing into the stem wall. So something else that you normally don't see here, but is actually required for many installations in California in the code, is rigid insulation. on the outside of the slab. That acts as a thermal break because you lose heat through the interior of the house is heated. The slab is warmer than the outside. They're showing, see that temperature? 0 degrees. And you go down a little ways and it's 10 degrees. But usually you don't have to go too deep. Once you get below the frost line, the temperature is normally around 55 degrees year-round. But this is rigid insulation, and you have to have some flashing that comes down over the edge. So we can also provide a thermal break inside, and I don't know if they got pictures of that or not, but if you're on you may have to step the footing. So this is step footing versus just a level footing. The code says up to a 10% slope, we don't have to step the footing. We can just follow the slope. But once the slope is steeper than 10% or 1 in 10, the footing needs to be stepped if you're following the topography. Post-tension slabs a lot of times look somewhat like this. So forms. So here, like I said, the footing is wider than the stem and extends outside of the edge of the slab. And so when that happens, you still need to come back in and locate where your building line is. And that's what they talk about in this particular chapter a bit. So here they poured the footings. We've got some form boards, and this was something we were going to try and do outside. So, and you set the forms up. They're tied together. You got to brace it off so they don't flop open when you pour the concrete in there. These ties are sometimes called spreaders. They hold the top width to the correct width. There's also a bunch of form ties that you can get, which I thought I saw some in here somewhere. They're in your book. So here's a little better picture. Footing's been poured. This little V-shaped notch, that's a key. That's just to help provide a little shear connection between the stem wall you're going to pour and the footing itself. Forming up for the stem. So this is one side. Before you put this up, you want to oil the forms. And again, we don't do too much of that because we are using slab on grade for the most part here in San Diego, but in other parts of the country, they have basements or they have crawl spaces because of the need to go down. Here, this is just a sprayer. And so they're applying that form release agent. We used to use diesel, but that's illegal now. But I still see people using diesel. So why, I don't know. Thank you. All right. So you may have to do some blockouts. So this would be like for a beam pocket, a girder pocket. And so that needs to be attached to the inside of the form. Here they're showing using 3/4 inch plywood, but you could use some other material if you wanted to. Column forms, if you're doing a column. Again, forming there is science to it, but most of the people just do it. And hopefully it's stiff enough that it doesn't bulge or blow out. Concrete we've talked a little bit about. If you have any questions though, spit them out. And this is somebody using a sprayer, and they're spraying a curing compound on there. You can see that looks like pretty difficult work. There is a uniform cover rate that you're supposed to get. Normally you get 200 to 400 square feet per gallon of curing compound. Quiet, Lucy. That's one of my dogs. So you can use plastic. So you just pull a plastic membrane over it. That'll work too. I think we talked about the slump cone test. Yes, no?
I don't think.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think we talked
Okay.
about that.
Okay, well, I got a video that shows it better. This doesn't really show you a very good picture. This looks kind of like a toilet plunger to me on the left. What it is this is a metal cone. Typically has a couple of ears on it. So this is placed on a flat surface. Concrete goes in 3 lifts. And you see 3, 4, and 5 because each lift is supposed to be the same volume. So it's smaller at the top, the diameter. So the amount of concrete that goes in the form has to be a little higher. So anyway, you take a sample of the concrete, you put it in the 3 lifts. Each lift is rodded. This is supposed to be, looks like a wooden dowel. This is supposed to be a 5/8 inch diameter steel rod, and you rod each layer 25 times. It's not supposed to extend into the layer below more than an inch, but you do that. And then when you're all done, you grab the little ears that they don't show here, you pull this off, and the concrete will slump. Now this looks like a pretty low slump here because it's got the same shape as the cone. You put the rod over the top, you measure this distance, and that's what they call the slump. So normal for construction is somewhere in the 3 to 5 inch range.
Okay.
We can put fibers in there. These are little, basically little hairy things that you drop in the concrete. So if you're not using rebar and you're trying to get some crack control, some of these are made out of plastic, some are made out of vinyl acetate, some are made out of steel, but we can mix the fibers in with the concrete mix and they provide some crack control. If you want more information on any of this stuff, let me know. So concrete, we got the Portland cement. You mix it with water. The Portland cement and the water form a paste. The paste acts as a glue that binds the aggregate together. We usually have large aggregate and fine aggregate. So the bigger the aggregate, the less cement you need because the less surface area you have. The smaller the aggregate, the more paste you need to coat all the aggregate. That looks like a little shaky operation there. Here they're placing the concrete with a wheelbarrow. You see we got a plank. You'll notice that plank is kind of sagging. So when you use a plank that way, test it first. If you've got that much concrete in there, that looks like maybe 300 pounds of concrete. Concrete weighs 150 pounds a cubic foot. A 3 cubic foot wheelbarrow will hold 450 pounds of concrete. That is difficult to control. And if you've got a board underneath you that's bouncing, you'll have some problems. You may also push the rebar down into the sand. So here you can see we've got some sort of visqueen, some sort of plastic underneath the reinforcing steel.
They're going to be there for weeks pouring that.
Yeah. Well, if you can, you can tailgate it, you can pump it, you can use a crane and some buckets, you can use a conveyor belt, or you can try and wheelbarrow it in. But this is not a very efficient method of doing it. Looks like this person and this person on the far right are probably the ones that are planning on actually doing some of the finish work because they have rubber boots on. Person on the far left and the person with the wheelbarrow do not appear to have rubber boots on, so you don't want them mucking about in the concrete. If you've ever done this work, sometimes if your boots don't fit right, they'll come off. The concrete, they'll get stuck in the concrete. And like I said, then it gets a little messy. But that's a method of pouring it. Somewhere I've got some better pictures and I'll put something together for you on that. Here it's coming out of the tailgate off the back of the truck. And so the truck driver has a little switch there. They can discharge it, cut it off, and drop it down in here. This doesn't look like a very neat, I can't tell what they're doing. That dirt looks a little loose in there. So also you can see that these stakes extend down into the concrete. If they're pouring a footing here, they've got to get those stakes out supposedly before the concrete hardens up too much that they can't get them out. A lot of times though, they can't get them back out and they just cut them off, which is a code violation to leave them in direct contact with the footing. Different ways of anchoring a sill. So this is a hold down upper right hand corner. This is a sill anchor. Simpson makes these. I don't like them because they're pretty thin, and my feeling is they're going to rust out after a relatively short time, certainly much quicker than an anchor bolt, and then your sill may not be attached to your concrete anymore. You can use concrete block. So most of the block here in San Diego is 2-cell. I've seen the 3-cell. You can insulate some of the cells if you want.
Insulated with what?
Perlite is one material that they use. It comes in bags. It's like little glass beads almost, and they just pour it into the cell and it acts as an insulating agent. They also have some that have a little cavity built into them that they slip some rigid insulation into. I'll try and find some pictures. Here they're just spreading some mortar on a footing. And so that normally the bed joint between the blocks is about 3/8 of an inch. For this first one, because not everybody gets their footing in level, they allow you to go up to 2 inches so you have a little room to adjust the out of level of your footing. So here they're building a cavity wall. The concrete block, the gray stuff, a lot of people don't like the looks of it. So we've got the structural block and then we've got face brick going over it. And so those are tied in with little wire ties. There's typically a little gap. You can see that this is so it looks simple, but if you're they have the mortar on. That looks like 12 block too, which is pretty heavy. So this is just showing one way of tying an intersecting wall into another wall. Again, we don't use this type of block. I haven't seen this 3-cell block used here locally.
Me neither.
So if you're going to put a lintel in, so this is a lintel block, this U-shaped block, allows you to put some reinforcing in there. You can see that normally what we want is these openings should be modular, and they make windows and doors for masonry because you would like to either have a full block end or a half block end. And this is just temporary bracing that typically goes in. The block is laid across. You put the steel in, you get an inspection, and then this is all grouted. So they're calling it concrete fill. What we're using is grout. Grout typically has a slump around 10 inches or so, so it's pretty fluid. The block soaks up a lot of that excess moisture, and as it's soaking up that water, it also pulls the mortar into the rough surface of the block, so you get a better bond. So this lintel acts as the header. And if you got a lot of load on it, you may have to have a much deeper one. So this is, if you're trying to reduce heat flow, you have lightweight masonry units, which cost more money. You can use rigid insulation, cavity wall construction. You can also put sheet insulation on either the interior or the exterior or both. They also have insulated concrete forms. If you're below grade, you need some sort of way to pick up the water and move it. So that's what they're showing here. Stem wall just outside the footing. We typically have some gravel, a pipe, and some filter material. Now the reality is, do you think most of the water is going to travel in the gravel, or do you think it's going to find its way through the little tiny holes in the pipe, and all of it's going to go out the pipe? What do you think?
The gravel.
Pipe or gravel? Yeah. Most of the water will go through the gravel. It has to build up high enough to actually get in the pipe, but the pipe is just a kind of a backup or safety feature. Normally, we put a filter fabric over the top, though, to keep fine material, dirt, sand from getting into the gravel and clogging up the gravel. We also need to make sure that it has an outlet. That this water that's collected has a place that it can go to, either by gravity or to a sump pump. So these are insulated concrete forms. And so you can just stick them together. They fit together like Legos. You drop the reinforcing in there, you grout the voids in the insulation, and then you have an insulated wall. Typically, they'll put drywall on the inside and stucco on the outside, or some other type of finish that's adhered to it. So we had one class that went up to, I think, Harbison Canyon after the fire and helped work on a house like this. So the nice thing about it is, the forms are so light, you can build them and carry a, pretty big section of wall over and set it in place. So they're just showing you some other pictures of the ICF. So if you hear that term with regards to construction, that's a insulated concrete form. There's a better picture of it. So this is the top of the wall. These are little plastic spacers that are typically inside of the insulation. And here they're just grouting up the wall. Once that hardens up, they're done. You don't have forms to strip because you're using that for insulation. The problem with forming up walls, concrete walls, is you have to build a wood wall, reinforce it, pour the concrete, let the concrete set, and then you have to get rid of your wall. And as you can see, this is almost like framing a whole building. So for some projects where you're using reinforced concrete or poured in place concrete, you're spending 40% of your costs is just in the constructing the forms and then removing them. If you can use them multiple times, that's great. But if you're working on a custom project, so it's a one of a kind, then you build it and then you got to tear it down. So if you go by a Caltrans bridge site where they're doing cast in place concrete, first they have to build a wooden bridge. They pour the concrete, then they have to remove the wooden bridge. And that basically just gets thrown away typically. So it does take a fairly high degree of carpentry skill though for that. Now this is what I was alluding to earlier, where they have some rigid insulation on the outside of this concrete stem, but on the inside, they've also provided the thermal break between the slab and the concrete stem wall. And so that's to reduce heat loss. San Diego, we normally don't worry too much about that because it doesn't get that cold, but Minnesota, Michigan, up there in the Sierras, you might see some construction like this where they are floating the slab inside in order to minimize heat loss. So how high-tech does this look?
Not very.
Not very. So we're pouring concrete. So they pour the concrete. They're just screeding this off. So they use the sawing action back and forth with just a piece of 2x material. When you're pouring concrete, you want to pour into the previous pour. You can see the visqueen underfoot. He's got the rubber boots on. I have no idea what this person is doing. They don't look like like they're properly attired.
It looks like a little kid.
Yeah, it's probably somebody they brought from home. Maybe this was an early coronavirus picture, bringing the family. So it's hard to say, but, and again, you can see that this steel is just laying on the slab. So ideally it's up on blocks, adobes, chairs, something. Otherwise they have to hook it up. So it looks to me like they haven't gotten to this section. This looks like the screed they're planning on using for the next section. But right here, they're using it for this pour. Steps. And again, this looks a little suspicious to me because normally I don't like to have concrete right up against siding or something. It's gonna rot. So you'd normally like to have a little bit of an air gap between your steps. And the building face. So there is a maximum angle on these steps when you have them tapered that way. Normally you want this to slope a 1/4 inch per foot away, so if water collects there, it'll run off. Again, not as big a problem here, but up in the mountains where it freezes, if you get water sitting on there and it turns to ice overnight, you hate to come out your door and fall on your butt, or worse yet, hit your head on one of these concrete treads, which may cause some severe damage or kill you. But again, there's a bit of an art form to doing the pouring. And also, one problem that you have is you see here, this is a fairly long run. So when they pour the concrete, typically these will tend to bow unless you brace them properly. The vertical face on the treads. So the riser itself can wind up being kind of weirdly shaped. So, sidewalks. And again, normally I don't like to pour directly on the grade. I like it to be a little bit below the grade, because what will happen is if you get a little erosion or that edge of the slab may become exposed and get undermined a little bit, and it just doesn't look quite right. Also, this is a step off or a trip hazard if you're backing up. So normally I like the sidewalk to have some what they call shoulder backing or be flush with the grade, so it's not as much of a hazard. So again, you see that high-tech approach to concrete, right? Somebody down there on their knees. Looks like they're almost out of their boots at this point. He's got a derby back here on his back pocket, but they're just screening it off. This looks like a float probably here. And I'll post a video or two on finishing. So for the joints, they talk about, they say start sawing 18 to 24 hours after the concrete is placed. Normally you want to get on it as soon as you can. So they have a special machine called a soft cut. If you wait 18 to 24 hours, generally the concrete will put its own cracks in there for you. Will put its own joints in. I'm seeing some yawning. It means I've talked too long.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I've just been writing down your credit card numbers. Getting your passwords. So, so I don't know. What do they got here? Oh, this, they're just talking, you know, more pictures and stuff. So would you stop, Doug? I have 5 dogs here helping me.
What kind of dog?
I've got the one that's barking is a Dorky. Half Dachshund, half Yorkie. I've got a couple Dachshunds and a counterfeit Labradoodle.
That's awesome.
We were told it was a Labradoodle, but it's not. And then I've got just some mutt that some other rescue dog. We've got a bunch of rescue dogs, so it's always something. Anyway, at one time for termite control, we used to do this. We used to fill the ground with poison. That is not considered to be acceptable anymore. It was quite effective, but you can't do that anymore. So what we typically do is put a termite shield over the top of the stem, and we have to keep the wood separated from the concrete. Now the subterranean termites will come up out of the ground and they'll build little dirt tubes, and they'll crawl up those tubes to get to the wood. So if you want to know how to estimate concrete, we can go over that sometime. This is one of those parts of the country where they've dug down to the frost line. They've formed up the footing. They poured the concrete, and he's working here with a little hand floater, a derby, whatever you want to call it, a trowel. So looks like they're wearing all the proper PPE for construction: tennis shoes, shorts, baseball cap. So, gloves are important though, because the concrete will give you a chemical burn. So it has pH of about 12. That's why concrete, from one standpoint, is great for countertops, because most bacteria and viruses and things like that can't live on the concrete because it's too basic. They prefer a pH of around 7. And I think that's it for that. So we'll get out of there. We'll let you have fun back here. So I'll find out what's going on. I've got some more videos. We've got some framing. There's some excellent videos that were done by a guy named Larry Hahn for Taunton Press. And I've got the links to those, and he goes through floor framing, wall framing, and roof framing, and does, I think, a pretty creditable job. And you can stop and start them when you want. So how about you folks? Do you have any questions on anything?
You know, I was looking at the, so I have the Construction Master Pro calculator on my phone. Have you ever seen the Concrete Master Pro calculator?
Yeah, I think so.
There was some mixed reviews about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so
You
I've
know if
got,
the concrete version is any good?
yeah, I think it's fine if you're doing concrete work. Let me see if I can get this thing turned around. So I'm still not quite used to that, but yeah, this is, I've got this one, and then I think I've got another one. Tell me, what are you doing? Whoops. And then I have this one here, which maybe if I can get it open. I think it opens. Oh, there it is.
That's nice.
So the thing I like about this one is, while the other one has a little case, this one just flips over and covers it. So they do feet and inches, yards, and
There's asparagus is outside and clean that shit up. Oh, no worries.
pardon?
Do you want those or just throw them out? Oh, they're probably still good. Hey, you eat the whole top of it, right?
Yes. Yeah, so the concrete one, I'm sure they're good if you're doing concrete. They also make some little slide rules that you can get to, let me get rid of this thing. There we go, I'm back. So they also make some, an electrical, if you're doing electrical calculations, but yeah, if you're doing a lot of concrete, I've got some little slide rules that you used to be able to get from the concrete companies. If you're just trying to do calculations, you can use stick the dimensions in there, and it'll tell you what the volume of concrete is. Normally, you're not going to get all of it out. Typically, you have about 3 to 5% more that you need to order. And you can't go off the plans. You have to go out and actually measure the footings, because very rarely are the footings built exactly per plan. And if we've had weather like we have now, after every rain, you got to hog them out, and the footings keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you need more and more concrete. So I think the last time I checked on prices, it was running around 120 bucks a yard, 125 bucks a cubic yard for concrete. If you need a pump, that'll be extra. And normally I like to have the concrete pump get there a little early, because they always seem to have a flat tire on the way to my job, which means I think they just got up late. Lots of different concrete mixes. So I'll put something together on that. So anything else? Who's here? Oh, we got 16 people in here today. That's pretty good. I feel reasonably good
That's
about
really
that.
good.
So
How many people are in the class? We're in the class.
I think there's close to 30,
Oh, wow.
20, 28, 29. So that's why I'm trying to get the phone numbers. In the old rosters I had people's phone numbers, but some people I know haven't been getting my emails. And if you can't get into Canvas, that would be another place. And then if the school is trying to email you and the email's not working, they're not going to be able to reach you. So anyway, my hope is,
I get all your emails.
oh, well,
I get doubles of every
apologize for
one.
that. Yeah, I apologize. So my email volume has doubled or tripled since all of this started. So, but I do try and answer all of them as quickly as I can. And if there's anything in particular that you want to cover, let me know. So you may be wondering what I'm looking at. I just noticed I have some ivy growing through my wall. I'll take a picture of it for you.
Might
So
want
it's growing
check
from the
that out.
outside into the inside. So that's what you call sustainable construction. So that's that environmentally friendly construction. So.
When I was younger, we had some mushrooms growing under our couch. We had a big moisture problem. And we lift up the couch and there's mushrooms growing through the carpet.
Well, depends on what kind of mushrooms they are. You might be able to sell them for enough to get
the carpets
your
clean.
moisture problem taken care of. So you need to get rid of the water. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Must have a high groundwater somewhere. A lot of moisture comes from somewhere. And if you folks have any suggestions or things that you want to cover, feel free to send me an email or let me know about that. This is your class. I want it to be as good for you as we can make it. If you have questions on a particular subject, let me know. I don't have all of my school stuff here, but I do have a fairly extensive library at home of my own. And we can get into things, and I'll be using some video too. We may
I have a
try and do
question,
some
Larry.
exercises. I'll try. Yes.
So as far as the review questions, do you want us to do chapters 8 and 9?
Did we skip chapter 7?
Yeah, I'll send out a summary of where we should be.
Okay, perfect.
To date, and I will send out an assignment. I'll be posting it, as you saw. I have some things on Canvas, but since most people can't get into it, we'll try and get Canvas fixed for you, and I'll also be sending out emails of anything I post on Canvas.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
The goal, though, is if you want to finish, we want to let you finish, so you don't have to come back and start taking things over. And, I guess maybe I could hook up a body cam or something and do a few things around here. If I can still move, and if you guys want Randy involved, I'll like I said, I'm letting him flounder for the first week or two with the computer because he doesn't like the computer. But I'll send him a link, and we can get him in the class. He'll be fine.
I want to see him on here. He's hilarious.
Okay, well.
Yeah, I miss this. I was in his plan reading class and I miss it, man. It was really good.
Okay, well,
I'm bummed that I'm
Yeah, I
give
took
him
his
a
plan
call.
reading class too. He is so funny.
I'll give him a call and I'll send him the link, and we'll get him in. because he's a lot funnier than I am. Other than
you
his
guys
appearance.
are equally as funny in your own ways.
Yeah, you guys are a good
Oh,
duo.
Yeah, let me just get one thing and see if I can get it down. Just a second. I'll try not to kill myself.
Oh, good.
You okay? Guys are funny. Oh yeah, look at that thing.
Now some people don't believe I'm
Whoa.
a true Texan.
Oh my God.
So these are probably, I don't know, 60 years old.
Wow. You got a
This one-
Cadillac or a big truck to throw that
Well,
on?
that's what I'm looking for. Maybe a Fiat.
You throw that on a smart car.
Maybe a Fiat. My grandfather had 4 sons, and he had a set made for each son. And these were my father's. And so I inherited those. But
Impressive.
yeah, so
What do you do with that?
what do you do with
Do
it?
this. Just show it off.
I'm
Kill
thinking
people.
about,
Kill people with it.
I was thinking about turning it into a necklace.
Oh, God. There you go.
Because, you know, in this age of social distancing,
Yeah.
it's about right.
Perfect.
So, and I don't know if you can see up close. See that?
Wow. Yeah, it's
That's
got the
Texas.
Texas stuff.
Oh, Texas Longhorn. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that's Texas Longhorn.
Yeah.
So this is a set from a real Texas Longhorn, but I'll put it down because, like I say, as a necklace, it's a little heavy.
Yeah.
And I show you the family finger, but that's politically incorrect. So my sister gave it to me after one of the dogs bit her.
Mm.
Oh, shit.
But so you like I said, give some thought to it. I'm trying to reestablish contact with as many of you as possible. If you know of anybody or talk to anybody in the class, try and get them to show up. And I don't have too much more. Like I said, if you want to talk to me or Zoom with me, let me know. If you guys want a class that's not regularly scheduled, I can work it around the other classes. I'll be happy to do that. We'll be recording this, and these will be posted to YouTube eventually once I figure out how to do that, but I'm still working on my technology, technique, and all those other crazy things.
Okay.
So I don't know if any of this is working for any of you, and I'll try and get a little more adept at, like I said, at some of this high-tech stuff and get some of my software upgraded, and we'll see how we
Are
go.
you taking a roll call, like a roll?
I know who you are because it's
we have our names
recorded.
there.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Alright.
for right now, I'm not worrying about it, but eventually, you know, if you'll either turn in your homework or you won't turn in your homework, and what we're trying to do is just make life easy. Now, some people just like to tune in, turn their video off, and then they can go out in the yard and work out, have lunch, watch TV and then run back at the last minute and say bye.
That's not cool.
And Larry, Carlos here. I'm just I'm looking at the Canvas, and there's a under the help there's a what appears to be a tutorial section on how to use Canvas a little bit, become more familiar with it.
Well, there is a tutorial. The problem I think that many people are having though is the information is just not showing up on Canvas for students. So
That's what's happening to me.
even
Yeah.
if you know how to use it, the information isn't there to use, or the infrastructure to support Canvas isn't there that allows students to get in. So I will make the authorities aware of that. As I said, I hope everybody has a great spring break. And I am going to be working next week. But if you want to talk to me, you want to go over something, you want me to present something or arrange for some kind of a demonstration, let me know. I'll be posting some video links for you too, which I think you'll enjoy. The Larry Hahn ones are pretty good.
So just so I'm clear, are we doing this next week, Larry? Or is it
No.
spring break?
Well,
Okay.
we're not scheduled to do it, but if you want to do it, just let me know and I'll set up a Zoom of some sort. But
I'm
most
fine with
people, I think, are having, all kinds of adjustments to make in their life because of this whole new way of doing things. I know you probably got problems and issues and families and lives and other things to deal with. But if you miss me, or if you want Randy on, I can have a special Randy class.
I don't know.
Yeah, we should do that.
Can you hear me? This is Jody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Maybe I can get. Pardon?
It was just a sound check. I'm going to take pictures of the chapter 8. I did that one, and I haven't done chapter 9. So when I do chapter 9,
okay,
I'll send it from the same email that you sent me for this site. I found it.
that's fine. That's fine. Like I said, we'll get things worked out, and
Thank you.
things are going to change. They have changed. They've been changing. They'll continue to change, and so we'll see how all of this sorts itself out. In the meantime, I hope everybody stays healthy and as happy as you can be. I got to go see what my spouse is doing. I think she's knitting a noose. She's been stuck in the house with me for two weeks.
Also, I was going to say, Etsy is a site that's selling masks. Etsy, E-T-S like Sam, Y. They're selling masks, and Beverly Fabrics and the fabric stores are giving advice on, Joanne Fabrics are giving advice on how to make them and giving kits out for masks.
Yeah, well, the problem is I've got masks, rubber gloves, all of that, but
So to be sure, whatever is posted on campus, he said that he would email those as well.
Yeah, he's gonna email us today on where we should be at homework wise.
Have you guys gotten anything on campus from him?
That's the thing about being carpenter, we have masks.
Yeah, see, the problem is in the carpentry business, I've had these for years.
Yeah.
And I've got boxes of rubber gloves I've had for years. And so, I was, I guess, ahead of the curve, but that's just because for OSHA, you gotta have these aren't supposed to be particularly effective anyway, but they're better than nothing, I guess. So
I wear my respirator when I go to the grocery store.
Okay.
Do you know if it says it has to be N95, and I have a mask that has like this wetsuit sort of material on the outside and Velcro's in the back, but I didn't know if it was N95 or not.
Well, I
That's
don't
an
know.
N95 mask right
This
there.
one, there you go, N95.
Yeah.
95.
So,
I wear my respirator when I go to the grocery store.
yeah, well,
Yep.
that's okay, and if I'll double check, but like I said, I've had these for, been buying them for the class for years, and but I did notice that Home Depot was out of everything just about. You know, there's not a
Yep.
mask or anything else, so I don't know what people are doing with all those things, but I've got a whole bunch of the carpentry type dust masks, so I don't know if they're all N95, but those are, so.
If we have to make it ourselves, is N95 just like a thickness to it? Like if the thicker it is?
It's a size. It's a particulate size.
No size.
Yeah, so, and I'd have to look at the particular standard, but that, what it is the, you're trying to keep out particles of a specific size to go through it. And again, nothing is perfect. They say the best thing is to wash your hands. You know, hand sanitizer is to be used when you can't wash your hands. Because and right now they're suing, or the FDA or somebody's going after Purell because they don't have any scientific backing for that. Kills 99.99% of the germs. Some of the stuff I've read says you need to use the sanitizer for a couple minutes before it kills everything off.
Mhm.
But, I did pick up some, what they had a little bit of hand sanitizing soap or antibacterial hand soap at commercial Costco. So I did make one trip, but I've been in big trouble since then, so I'm not allowed to leave the house at the moment, even though they made me stand in line at the Costco. But they weren't too busy at the commercial Costco. They don't get the same foot traffic that they do down at Mission Valley.
So the thickness of it doesn't matter. What if I want to make one?
Yeah, I think if you make one, I don't think it makes a big difference. The big problem there is can you breathe through it? The problem with all masks is that any kind of a mask is going to make it more difficult to breathe. So if you're doing hard work, you may have some issues, but you know, it's going to catch something. It's going to provide some protection. So where did that come from?
I don't know.
Isn't
Not
that
sure.
interesting?
That says Brad
Well, that's
McGrath
okay.
for sharing that.
Who are you?
Yeah, that's okay. I don't mind. But yeah, it shouldn't make much difference. It's not the thickness so much. You know, if you have multiple layers, it's going to be a better screen. So it's just physics. You're trying to keep, you know, the viruses are very, very tiny, but they're attached typically to water droplets of some sort is how they normally float through the air, but more typically people are picking them up from surfaces. Somebody touches it. You know, we're always spending most of our time doing weird things to our face, and then we touch something, and that's how most of the transfer occurs, is through touch. And that's why they're telling you to wash your hands all the time. There's also, you know, there's about a school sent out about a jillion emails on COVID-19, and there's a bunch of other stuff out there. One thing I have noticed is in the US is that from a mortality standpoint, we've been doing much better than most of the world.
Yeah.
You know, where in other places it's been 3 or 4% of the people have been that get it have been dying. In the US, it appears to be around 1% or less than 1%. So, you know, that's a pretty good thing. And, you know, unfortunately, it's people that are, well, I don't know. I'd have to check my driver's license. People about my age and older who have underlying health conditions are the ones that are primarily affected. Most of you folks are fairly young and healthy, and you'll just get sick. you'll have a cold, you'll have something like the flu or the cold, and you get better. So, and eventually, most of us will be exposed to it just because it's like a flu or cold. It'll just get passed around. But right now, they're trying to slow it down so they can figure out how to better deal with it, because if everybody gets sick at once, it's a problem trying to take care of a bunch of people as opposed to a few. So we shall see. But so far, so good. I've got my Longhorns. I'm good to go. I get
Okay, well,
those
see
on
you
the
guys
car.
next time. See you guys next time.
Get those on the front of the truck. But I will. We've gone almost 3 hours, not quite, but I'll let you go for today. But we will start back Saturday after next. I'll be hosting this. If you folks want to start a little later, let me know. I guess if you wanted to start earlier, we could do that too. So
No, that's good. No earlier.
we can start that. So if you want to 8:30 or 9, I'm flexible on the time. Give me some feedback and I'll take a look and we'll discuss it next time. So I'll plan on 8 o'clock, but then if I get enough people want to change it, we can move it to your class. And if you want to cover anything in particular.
I'm okay with 9.
Okay. So, we've got stuff. I've got stuff and materials, and because that's what my house looks like. It looks like a little mini Home Depot. Because
So
everybody has some baseboard in their house.
Yeah, I'm doing that today.
Not that clean, but we got them.
So this is MDF though, so a lot of the people that put this in don't like it because this is the stuff that says warning causes cancer. So this is cheaper than the wood. And if you want a custom profile, you can build up 2 or 3 different pieces if you want some sort of custom profile. But the sawdust coming off of this, that's why I have those other masks, is because this stuff I don't like to breathe too much of. But I've got some smaller stuff here too, but I think. So this has a different profile. So happy days. So anyway, I will, I guess, let you go. I'm going to stop the recording at this particular point in time. And I'm sure that this particular session will be one of the great ones of the ages. Probably go into the Zoom Hall of Fame. So I thank you all for participating. If anybody wants to talk, I'll stick around for
I have
a
a question.
while.
I have a question. Before you stop the recording, are you going to continue recording the future sessions?
Yes, I am planning on recording the future session. So stopping the recording doesn't stop the meeting. So I'm going to stop the recording.